Welcome to the Well-Oiled Canine Podcast. I am your host and educator, Dana Brigman. As a certified holistic pet health coach, I hold certifications in canine nutrition, aromatherapy, homeopathy, and many other areas of natural wellness and behavior. It's my great joy to share resources with you that focus on keeping your dog healthy and happy for years to come. For more information, visit my website, where we're on a mission for your dog to eat better, feel better, and live longer, and to help you cut through the overwhelm. Now, on to the show. Good morning, everybody. It's Dana Brigman of the Canine Coach and Well-Oiled Canine, and I have Erica Accountis with me today. And actually, is that your current last name?
Yes.
Okay, because I see another one show up from time to time on your emails. We're going to be talking about her dogs, Cooper and Odin, today, mostly about Cooper, although we don't want to forget Odin. But Cooper has had quite the journey of health issues, largely allergies. And I sometimes say Cooper's allergic to being alive. So just say hi to everybody, and let's just get started talking about Cooper.
Hi, thanks for having me. Yes, our journey is a little bit crazy, but I'm so thankful to have found Dana and have gotten Cooper on the right track. Cooper is a rescue pit bull, and I actually fostered his entire litter as 2-week-old puppies with their mama. And Cooper I was drawn to him, and he spoke to me, so he ended up staying with us. Mm-hmm. And even from the get-go, starting kibble, we had issues with him. I remember going to my friend Angela and being like, he smells. Like, why does this puppy smell? And she then told me this is kind of where my journey started with health and wellness for dogs. She told me that different protein sources can cause dogs to have different smells. And so I started going more towards the fish kibble to try and help him with that, which helped a little bit. But even as a puppy, I remember him probably being about a year old, and we wrapped t-shirts. He wore a t-shirt around because he was just always itchy. And then he was, he was born in February. The following February, we realized we were headed to Japan for my husband's job. And so at that point, we started all of the paperwork and everything to get him there, him and Odin. And that in itself was another journey. But one of the requirements is Japan is a rabies-free country. So they have to at least have 2 vaccines 30 days apart and a blood titer to be cleared to fly in.
So I'm going to back up, and then I'm coming back to the rabies topic. But when you say he smelled, was it that yeasty Frito smell everybody talks about, or was it something different?
It was different. It was almost like a little bit of a skunky smell. I'm not sure why that happens or anything, but I always say he's always had Frito feet. He always had the Frito smelling feet, but this was definitely more of like a body odor, if that makes sense.
Was he the only one in that litter that had this issue?
As far as I know, I haven't heard anything else, but that's not to say there isn't. I haven't really kept in touch.
I think that may even be the first time I realized he had the issues as young as he was, right?
Okay. Yep.
That it started even before he was really 6 months old, right?
Right.
Okay. So started out as a rescue dog in a litter with his mama. You got him at 2 weeks. Somewhere along the way, he started with the skunky, stinky, smelly Frito feet. And we changed his food. Did that food change make any difference?
Yes, he did lose that skunky smell.
Okay, good. And so then fast forward till he's about a year old, and you guys are headed to Japan. And he got 2 rabies vaccines in the States, 30 days apart. Is that right? Before you took him over there?
I think it would be 3 because he would have had one as a puppy.
At around 6 months in the rescue, right?
Yes. And then when did they get their next one? At a year old?
Well, that's kind of the big debate, right? Most get it around 6 months old. The law in North Carolina says you have to have it by 6 months. And then sometimes the vet will say, we have to do a 1 year booster, which really is all the same vaccine. It's all the same. And so did you get that 1 year and then move into Japan?
I would have to verify. He might have only had two because I know they were like, oh, this is really dicey with the titer. He might not have the numbers he needs. So he definitely had two by that point, but there is a chance that he could have had three before we left for Japan.
Did you do a titer?
Yes. Yeah, that's the paperwork you need.
So that's interesting because a titer, and this is often misunderstood,
right, it's to see if you have the antibodies.
Is to see if you have any antibodies. And even today, I hear people coming in saying, my vet says the antibodies are low, so we need a booster. Right? That's not true. You either produce antibodies or you don't. So if you have any, you are protected. And then if you have any and are challenged by exposure, you would see a heightened number. But this notion of boosting is wildly misunderstood and, in my opinion, inaccurate in what our veterinary world is telling us. So, okay, so he had at least 3 headed to Japan.
Yes. Yeah, it's called a Fabin blood draw. And so it says they have to have 0.5 IU per milliliter to pass and be allowed to go into Japan.
Gotcha. And so did you know anything about detox work at that time?
No, we did not.
Okay.
And so, yeah, we didn't even know any of that stuff. And I think I had met you just at like a dog event right before we left for Japan. And I was starting to be very interested into the raw diet and everything. But going to Japan, getting dog food there was a nightmare as well. Right. And so at that point, we were on Signature kibble. I was trying to find like the best dry food that we could get there because I remember talking to you and seeing if we could get Volhard in Japan, and that wasn't an option. We tried some workarounds, but it was going to be crazy. And so, yeah, it was 3 years that we kind of didn't have a ton of options available to us being over there. And then, of course, Cooper being a puppy, he's also always been a little bit of a troublemaker, gets into trouble. He has eaten numerous pairs of sunglasses, flip-flops, remote controls. He has an impressive list of things that he has eaten. And then, I don't know, for whatever reason, when we were in Japan, he ate like a no-name brand Kong, and he like chewed that top nub off of it, and we didn't realize, or I picked up some pieces, but I didn't realize he actually swallowed some. And at about 18 months, he ended up having obstruction surgery. Oh. And the way that it worked in Japan is it's a whole different experience from vets here in the States. So they don't really have like emergency vets, and certain vets are closed on certain days. So I took him to one vet. I knew something was off. And because it was rubber, they didn't see it in the x-ray. And so they gave him anti-nausea medicine and sent him home. And the next day, same, no improvement, if not a little bit worse. So I took him to a different vet. And I think at that point, the time had been so long, they ended up removing 17 inches of intestines because they started to die off. But they were able to save him, and he had a lovely 5-day ICU stay.
Yes. So I'm curious, in the time you moved to Japan, you had him on the fishes, the Signature, a little bit higher quality kibble. Was he itchy then?
So surprisingly enough, when we went to Japan, he was a little bit less itchy. Mm-hmm. Something about the allergens there. Exactly. Which is strange because a lot of people say their dogs get allergies in Japan, which was the case for Odin. So they kind of flip-flopped in that aspect while we were there. And he still had the Fritos feet and was a little bit itchy, but not, I think probably the whole time we were there. I think we had him on a Zyrtec a day, and that was kind of enough to manage it, and occasionally through some Benadryl if
Right.
things flared up.
So
But
when he had this intestinal blockage and had part of his internals removed, 17 inches worth, did that change his health?
um, I don't think so. I mean, he dropped a lot of weight from the whole procedure in itself. But overall, I mean, I think he bounced back. But it was probably 6 to 9 months later. So his surgery was in October, and then April, I think, was his next health incident crisis, which after talking to you, a couple of years later, I think we look back, and I want to say in March, he probably had another rabies, was when he was due again. And probably a week or two later, he had an episode that we couldn't really explain. And being in Japan, the first vet that we could get to were Japanese. And so they were able to like stabilize him. And we just didn't have any answers. But I had taken him on probably a mile walk. And at the end, we were just sitting there talking to some friends, and he ended up throwing up and expelling the other end. So, when the body expels everything, something's not right. And I looked at his gums, and they were pale, and he just kind of collapsed. So we immediately just picked him up and got him in the car and went to the closest vet that was open. By the time we got there, he seemed, he had color back. He was breathing okay, and it was very strange. And it was probably either another 6 months or a year later that we got him into the American vet on base there. So their sole purpose is for the working dogs. So they try to work in the civilian dogs as they can. So we tried to go for like a once a year checkup, but it was too hard to get in for any sick calls. So we used the Japanese vets. But after reviewing all of their paperwork and everything, the Japanese vet put us on liver tonic. They said his liver values were off.
Makes sense.
Not really knowing what that was, but we followed that. And then once we spoke to the American vet, they were like, oh, this could have been a seizure. And so they sent us home with anti-seizure medicine, which luckily we never had to use. But now looking back in the timeline, it probably was a sort of a vaccine reaction to having another rabies.
And I think we counted 11 vaccines, 11 rabies vaccines one time. You and I were adding them up, and we're like, holy crap, that's a lot.
There's like nine or 11, somewhere in there, yeah.
Well, yeah, that's a lot. Okay, and never any, and this is no judgment to you because you didn't know any better, but never any detox, never any prep for the risk of these vaccines and the detox after. And so this is one thing I really, really push currently, and I don't think a lot of people take it seriously. There, yeah. But this, in my head, this is an example of where it needed to happen, and nobody knew any better. Nobody told you any better. So yeah. So okay. So
even, not to sidetrack, but even Odin at one point while we were over there, they have a lot of like leptos prevalent. They have just a lot of other things that crop up in their climate. So I forget what vaccine. There's a vaccine that they have in Japan that has lepto and everything in it, but it's like 9 or 10 in one. It's crazy.
wow. Yeah.
And so one time Odin had like the hard lump reaction. And so after that, he bumped down to like the 5 in one instead of the 9 in one. So yeah, we've definitely seen different reactions for both of them. And I wish I had known about the detox and the prep and which ones to pick and choose.
Yeah, exactly. Well, so we're all on a journey of learning. I mean, I look back and go, if I had known now or then what I know now with some of my own dogs, I think their outcomes would have been very different. And so those are stories that I plan to tell in this podcast, not this particular podcast, but the series. More to come on those things. So let's move forward. You're back in the States, and how severe was Odin's allergies by the time you got back? Were they different? When did it start to really become really?
Well, so Odin's allergies ramped up in Japan, and he did the Cytopoint and the Apoquel. And then when we moved back, they did the flip flop again. Odin started to improve, but I mean, at this point, Odin, he was our fluffy dog. So he had chewed off all the hair on his feet and his nose from rubbing. And then Cooper, when we got back, was just going crazy. He was so itchy. So we ended up starting him on the Apoquel, but we moved back, I want to say in June. And by August, I think we had talked to you and started on Valhard for both of them.
Did you do NDF2 or rescue when you switched?
NDF2.
And did that help?
Yes. And I will say we didn't work as closely with you as we needed to on the transition. So for Cooper, it was a little bit rougher than it probably should have been. So definitely recommend following those protocols.
Okay, tell us how, because I want people to understand that I may seem scary sometimes, but I'm really not. Whatever's going on. But what happened in the transition?
So I jumped, which I told you they were on like a whitefish kibble forever. Yeah. And so I had jumped because one of my friends does Valhard and just does beef and NDF2. And I was like, okay, that's what I'll do. And so I jumped right in and did that for Cooper. And I think it was 70-30 beef. And I just started that. And so a few weeks to a month in, he had a stomach, like he stopped eating. And that's usually his first. He's not, I don't want to say he's a bad eater, but he could go without. Mm-hmm. He could take it or leave it. And so when he stops eating, I'm like, uh-oh, what's going on? And because of his surgery, I always kind of overreact. So we did take him to the emergency vet, and they ran some blood work, and I think that was a little bit of a pancreatitis type flare up, probably from the high fat content in beef, too much, too fast.
Yeah. And he's missing 17 inches of his digestive system.
Yes. Yes, we always wonder about that with nutrients and everything. So
yeah, so a lot of factors at play here for this guy, right? So okay.
Oh yeah.
No judgment, which is it is.
Yep. So now we're on turkey and fish. And so that worked well. Both of them, I mean, they love it. And the transition after that was great. And just not to jump around, but to backtrack a little bit, we had our first child in Okinawa, and my daughter, with her joining our family and the negative connotation with pit bulls, we just wanted to make sure that we had all of our ducks in a row. And Cooper's personality, which I hadn't talked about yet, is he was just very, I mean, he got into trouble a lot, but he was also very shy, very timid, and very insecure. Not really sure how that all came about, but we never wanted anything to happen out of fear for him. And so we did do professional training with an e-collar trainer. We were never able to walk him on a leash. I think between his fear and his strength, like he just pulled and he was scared of anything and everything. And with the stroller, we didn't want to worry about that. So we worked through a lot of training to kind of build his confidence, which definitely helped. But going through the training, we also did Odin, because we didn't think it'd be fair to have one dog follow certain commands and not the other. So we did both. And I just remember talking to the trainer, and Odin like stares at you. He has that eye contact that every dog trainer dreams of. And right. Cooper like will barely glance in your direction. And that kind of tells you a little bit about his fear level. He just would not look you in the face. And my husband still thinks I'm a little bit crazy, but after we made probably 6 months or so after the switch to Volhard, we always make our dogs sit and wait to be released to eat. And so now I sit there and I wait, and Cooper looks me straight in the eye, and I tell him to release to eat his food. So I think that was the biggest like, aha, oh my God, this is crazy. Like I never, you hear fears in the liver, but after we've done some of these cleanses and cleaned up his diet, and now he really will, like we'll be out on a walk and he will look me in the eye, and he's never done that. He's now almost 7. So it's pretty crazy.
That's amazing. Right. Because as you were telling that, I'm thinking there's a lot that happens inside the body when it's toxic, shall we say. Right. And I even just had a client yesterday post a new testimonial that her dog had sort of moved into this isolation mode. He's 15, but he had sort of moved into this just isolation. she changed his food, and she made this big post about, I've got my baby back, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or whatever that is, but think of when she says that. But she's like, he's so re-engaged. And the only thing we changed was food. Right.
Amazing.
It's pretty amazing how some of those things can start to evolve.
Definitely. Yes. So I know, I think I've texted you a couple times, like maybe this was a bad idea, because he is full of himself. He's a little puppy again, and every time we leave the house, he has to go into his crate. I think I texted you in panic last holiday season. My parents came to visit, and their dog is still on kibble. I've at least we talked them into the endurance on top, but they're still on kibble. And my dad left the kibble on like a bench, and we didn't realize, and left. And Cooper ate an entire gallon-sized bag of kibble after being on raw for a year and a half. And I was like, Dana, what do I do? He's gonna die.
No.
And being bloated and uncomfortable. He was totally fine. But yes, he is very confident and full of himself now, and he goes in the crate when we leave the house.
So let's talk about sort of what we now know about his allergies, right? Because we've been at this for a little while, and it's not perfect yet. I mean, he's not 100%, right? So we switched to NDF2. Did you ever switch to rescue diet? Did you
We did go, we went through a bag, like the big bag of rescue.
Without seeing a lot of difference.
Right. Yeah. It was about the same.
And so I think that's when we said, look, let's try a test, right? And at that time we were looking at 5 strands. So no judgment really against, I'm not bashing any product, but I will say I have seen better results now, better accuracy with the Glacier Peaks.
Mm-hmm.
We went down this 5 strands path, right? And
it was at the height of his crisis,
right,
allergy crisis, peak timing.
Came back like a Christmas tree. I mean, everything was red. Right?
It was.
And that was when I first started to say, this dog is allergic to being alive. And so he has intolerances, not necessarily allergies. He may have seasonal allergies, but we talk about intolerances to food, and it's almost everything.
Mm-hmm.
So what was on his safe list to eat?
Turkey, whitefish, and I think lamb. Those are the ones that we rotate through. And then for vegetables, it was basically broccoli, cauliflower, celery, carrots, and white potatoes. He couldn't have like sweet potatoes, or like it was very specific on the
right. So that means we took him off of Volhard, and you started cooking these big batches. I have photos of you making these big batches of food, in part because you were pre-freezing it for convenience because a new baby was coming, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. And so he did pretty well on that diet, right? On that protocol.
He did do really well.
Okay. And so then what happened?
Same time frame that we had the crisis last year, is this July, August, whatever blooms. Something I think gets him, and he starts licking. And once he does, I don't know if it's just his body type or whatever, but he gets super dark yeasty stains, and then I think it's the vicious cycle of the sweet yeasty feet and groin, and he just licks and licks and licks.
Yeah. So really what I think, summer is the season of fire, right? So everything's red hot inflamed if we look at it in those terms. But spring is the season of liver, right? It's the season of wood, which fuels the fire. And so we're talking Chinese medicine kind of stuff now. If we don't get the wood element damp enough, so to speak, then the fire is going to blaze even that much hotter. And so this takes us back to, how is his liver, right? Are we doing enough to support the liver and that sort of thing? And so that may mean, and this may be the first time I've said this to you, is that we need him on some sort of liver, like Livaplex, Livatonic, milk thistle, something on an ongoing basis. And that's not uncommon. So that may be something that we take a look at. But we did a new Glacier Peaks test, right?
No, we haven't done that
We
yet.
haven't done that yet, but we switched to a new recipe.
Have not started that, yes, but I'm acquiring all of the all of the ingredients and
accoutrements.
yes. Because he's allergic to or intolerant to all the ingredients and the over-the-counter multivitamins. So we're gonna make our own.
Oh yeah, and I can send that to you. In fact, I saw I have a graphic that shows it and then all the stuff, but I also noticed on Dr. Ruth's website, she started putting a bundle together of those things. So to make it easy for people to just get.
Awesome.
Okay, so today he's still eating a home prepared, customized recipe, and he's doing well.
He is slightly improved, yes. And so we met, I can't remember when we met, maybe a month ago. And I had pulled him on. We were like, oh, I don't know if the Benadryls or Tech are doing anything. So I pulled him off of that, and it was doing anything. I didn't think it could get worse, but it got a little worse. So we put him back on that, and now he is off the Benadryl. And occasionally I throw him a Zyrtec when they start licking their paws. But I think whatever was in bloom is dying down. But of course, now it's getting nicer out, and they want to go outside.
Yeah. So I don't think we've talked about the quercetin and nettles combination of products. So you and I can do that, but there's a couple of options for that. One is Dr. Ruth's Histopause. There is the Now brand quercetin and nettles allergy combo that I started using for a little dog that was here with me back in the spring. This little dog was on fire, right? I mean, he gnawed, he chewed, he scratched, he did everything, a little black pug. And I thought, he's miserable. And I can, he's not even my dog. And I can see the misery the pet parent goes through when a dog does this all the time. And you're like, how do I make this stop? He's got to be miserable, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I found this product from Now Brand Pets that has quercetin and nettles in it. And I started using that for him, but I was giving him like twice the suggested amount. It's natural. And I say that, and I don't want anybody to walk away, well, just because it's natural means it's 100% safe. You can get too much of even the good stuff, right? But I knew what this was, and I knew I could take him to a higher dose. And then I found Dr. Ruth's Histopause, which is automatically a higher volume of the constituents. So he was improving. So quercetin and nettles, I'm just trying to put that out there as an option for folks, including Cooper.
Mm-hmm.
A few weeks ago, my own dog, his little eyes started running like he was crying nonstop. And I thought, what is happening? He eats the very best of food. We've done all the detox. We've done all the things. And the only thing left was seasonal, right? Mm-hmm. The only thing left was seasonal. And so I put him on this quercetin and nettles combo, and he's dried up. He's completely back. But I also changed and increased his omega to what Dr. Ruth calls a therapeutic dose. I've always just followed the label. You pick up a bottle, you look, it says give 25 pounds, a half a teaspoon, and you move on about your business, right? This is what we don't know, and no one ever really educated us that in that bottle is a total number of milligrams. And some bottles have more milligrams than others. Mm-hmm. And so most bottles that we buy, let alone the quality of the product or the environmental efficacy of the product, right? Most of them are at a 50 to 100 milligrams per kilogram per day maintenance dose. When we have dogs with these chronic allergies, and Odin qualifies, then we have to take that number of omega-3 milligrams significantly higher into the 200 to 300 milligrams per kilogram per day. And so that's going to be one of our next changes for Odin as well. I did that with Huey coupled with the quercetin and nettles. So do I know exactly which one fixed it? No, I think it was both working together to fight inflammation.
Mm-hmm.
So went off on a little educational tangent there. Okay, so you're looking at making the crock pot diet now, that recipe, right? And getting in the supplements that it takes to balance that out. But Odin can't have the beef and the pork. Can he have pork?
No, I think they were different levels of red, yellow, green. But
Right. So that means he can't have the total body support supplement because those glandulars are in that product. It means he can't have the endurance vitamin mineral supplement because there's chicken liver in that.
mm-hmm.
So we're going to have to make a non-animal based multivitamin for him, but we still need to make sure he's getting the right combination of vitamin, because those organ meats have vital vitamins and minerals in them, and so we've got to balance that diet for him.
Mm-hmm.
And so you asked me something the other day about I don't remember if it was the meat or the veggies that you were concerned about as the options for that diet. So do you recall what that was?
The veggies.
Okay.
Because he pinged, and that was what was killing us on his 5 strands test, is it was like all of these healthy, what you would think would be healthy, great options. But I don't have the crock pot in front of me, but it was a lot like you can't have sweet potatoes, or they're not recommended on the 5 strands test. And so it's just a lot of vegetables. And that's why we were kind of lacking that rotation in the home cooked, because we just stuck with what he could have, or what we thought he.
We may just be able to rotate the proteins, and that's better than no rotation, right? So I think you said he can have at least 3 different protein options.
Yes.
So that gives you a different amino acid profile. I think once we get some stability, once we really think we've got some stabilization, then we can try to throw in, not necessarily to the big batch of food so that he would eat that every day, but to throw in a tablespoon of a new veg, right? Just topper to start reintroducing those things to a healthier gut, and let it start to sort of mount its own ability to go, okay, I can handle that. That didn't send me into a spiral. And maybe we can start to reintroduce new things that way. Now, a lot of pet parents are like, girl, we just hit stability. I am not changing it.
Well, with the economy the way it is, I will admit, I have a deep freezer, which has saved us with this diet. I would stock up. Costco will have lamb on clearance, and Angela and I will grind that up and we'll feed that. But beef, when it goes on clearance, and pork, I will rotate them, usually not more than like 1 day's worth. But then I'll jump back to a safe protein, just so it's not
right
constant. But knock on wood, so far so good.
And that's the way. So when people hear me talk about a rotation and elimination diet, that's rotating in these questionable, these flagged intolerant foods to try to get the body to say, I am not mounting a resistance to this anymore, in part because we're not making it do it every day.
Yes. Yeah.
Right.
Handle it once in a while.
Because what I don't think people really understand is, if you feed you can feed the same food today, all day, every day, and you think, I've never had a problem until you do.
Mm-hmm.
So I call it living in the rut. If you get in a rut, at some point, the body's going to fight back and say, I had enough of that.
Mm-hmm.
And now we've got an intolerance to a food that they've always been able to eat. So we need to make sure that there are some varieties. And the other side of that equation is not just to fight the allergies or the intolerances, but all of our dogs are going to be unwell at some point in the future, right? And what are they going to eat? If we're limited to a single protein, we don't have a lot of options. And if they start resisting that, where are we going to go from there?
Right.
So we need healthy guts that can tolerate a variety of different options, so that it might be beef broth that we offer and know that that's not going to send them into a tailwind. And, I believe that it's that ability to have a variety that has kept my 20-year-old eating so well. And he'll eat anything. He don't care. And I'm, knock on wood, I'm very lucky to have dogs that don't have a lot of this drama, because Lord knows, well, Huey and Howie are 18 and 20. I have not done this natural thing all their years. So I've been very lucky that whenever we did start, we got on the right path at the right time for them, right? But I had some dogs of my own, Great Danes, that dilated cardiomyopathy and Cushing's and all sorts of crazy things over the years. So again, if I only knew then what
Right.
and
Which
so
that was actually my first, my last dog, which is kind of how I ended up with Cooper. They looked a little similar, but he had hemangiosarcoma, HSA, and he died at 6, which was a total shock. But I wish I knew now, or then what I know now.
Well, and hemangiosarcoma is one of the worst ever. And the diagnosis is seldom any good. And the time frame from diagnosis till, is short. However, I've in some of these educational classes I've been taking, we're seeing upwards of 18 months of increased quality of life through CBD, fresh foods, adding boswellia and a number of antioxidants and things. And it's interesting. We're down a different tangent now, but I hope people will take away that there may be an option. I see a lot of people get that diagnosis and go, that's it. And they feel hopeless. And they're like, I don't want to go through, I don't want my dog to suffer in pain, blah, blah, blah. And we make a hard stop, we make a hard decision. And I respect anybody who has to do that. But I think in today's world, there are newer options that at least I want people to consider, to just question those options and see if yeah. Okay, so how is Odin today? Not Odin, Cooper. Well, I care about Odin too, but
they're both pretty good. Pretty good.
Okay. So your next steps are, we're switching the recipe again, right? We're changing the supplement profile that we've talked about, like adding more omega, a new vitamin mineral supplement, that kind of thing, to make sure we're closing all those gaps, because gaps in nutrition can show up in all sorts of health varieties of ways, including gut health and what looks like skin conditions and that sort of thing. So we're just trying to keep refining this and help make sure he continues to feel better. And then we're going to get ahead of the seasonal thing next year, going into spring with another detox. We're just going to do this annually and then come out of summer and do it again.
Okay.
Right. So that's the liver cleanse diet that I talked about. And he may be a candidate to be on milk thistle for the rest of his life or something along those lines. Anything else you want to share?
He will not be getting any more vaccines. But no, I'm thankful. I don't know what we would do, and that was another thing I just want to mention. I don't know if people know this, but this is something that I learned, because I don't feel like the vets always do a great job of explaining or telling you. But when it started with Odin, but then it transferred over to Cooper. But with the Cytopoint and the Apoquel, I did not realize that those were neuroblockers. It just tells their body that they are not itchy. I dumbly thought that it was solving the issue. Like it was just, making them not itchy. Like I don't want a Band-Aid. I want to fix the root cause.
Right.
And I think that's just not always clear. So I'm really grateful to have learned more, keep learning and keep working. And I know it can seem overwhelming, but I mean, I had a baby. I did the food prep.
In
the middle of it all. I did the food prep. I got the little plastic containers off Amazon and froze it so that when people watched our dogs, all they had to do was take out a container. And it's just the new routine. And it really was just easy. And it's funny now going to the crock pot. I'm like, oh man, we had that one down. But now we'll get this one down and it'll
right. What and what we may have to do is just figure out the right an updated vitamin mineral profile and supplement profile to what you were making, right? So we got options. That's one of the things I want people to understand is there are always options.
There are.
We stepped away from like NDF2 because it still has millet and oats and some grain type things in there. So we were trying to get away from some of those targets. And then even in the rescue diet, that is completely grain-free, marketed as hypoallergenic, and anti-inflammatory, still had veg content in it that Cooper can't eat.
The problem child.
So that was sort of it's like every path we took, there was a roadblock, which is why we're in a very strict custom diet right now for him. So, yeah. But yeah, to your point about the Apoquel and Cytopoint, most people, and I have literally had people say to me, I would rather shorten my dog's life than to see him in the misery he is in today.
So anything that you have to get a blood test to refill your prescription is probably not a good idea.
Right. And so, and then for some, it works for a while and then it doesn't. It stops because we never fixed the root. Right. And you would either have to give a much higher dose of this stuff or something different because the body's like, okay, enough of that. I'm not going to let that work anymore because it's not really fixing anything. And so to your point, I don't think people realize that it does not fix anything. It masks the symptom. It tricks the brain into thinking there is no itch. So the dog stops the gnawing and the scratching and the pawing and all that kind of stuff. So those areas heal because he's not agitating them. But what's going on in the gut health is unresolved.
Yep.
So, okay. Well, we've gone down a whole bunch of educational topics and I love it.
There's so much to learn.
So much to learn. And that's kind of the point of why I wanted you to share your story is I don't want people to give up. I see a lot of people, they'll call. My dog has allergies. We'll start a path and we might get a flare up. I say it gets worse before it gets better sometimes. And sometimes we can go down a path that looks like it's improving and then that may fall apart. Right. And Odin is one of those, that's wrong. Cooper is one of those very unique and special cases because there's just been so much.
Yeah.
I won't call him fragile, but in a lot of ways it is. Like one little change can derail the whole thing. And so we just keep trying to refine and help work through that. And I think we're on the right path. So.
Yeah.
And I appreciate
they're bumps in the road. They're not derailing. So
correct.
I encourage people to stay on the path. There's going to be ups and downs and he's going to eat a bag of something Christmas candy. He ate a gingerbread house last year, there's always going to be something.
And that's the thing. I want people to see you and go, well, if she can do it and have a baby and her husband's deployed and blah, 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 then I can do this too. It's not that hard to go to the grocery and batch some of this stuff.
Yeah. It becomes the routine and It really is. And I shared with you, I have emergency stuff. I have frozen vegetables in the freezer and cans of sardines in the pantry for those days that I totally forget. And I'm like, oh gosh,
Me too.
throw it together. Right? It happens. It's okay. They will survive a meal or two.
Bullhard. And there have been times over the years where I'm like, oh, shoot, I forgot to order a bag of food. What are you guys going to eat? And they've never gone hungry, right? They have never gone hungry.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Oh,
right. Well, thank you for your time and your story. And we're on a mission for Odin.
Yeah. Thanks for sticking with us.
Yeah. And
I know we've thrown you a few curveballs.
I wish I had fast and ready answers that solved it straight away, but I've always said I like the puzzle, and he's been one. Cooper has been one, and forcing me to dig a little deeper and learn a whole lot more. So thank you for that. Thank you for sticking with it and sharing with everybody today. I hope you have enjoyed today's podcast and learned new things to help support your dog's well-being for many years to come. For more information about nutrition and pet health coaching, please visit my website, welloiledcanine.com.